Conditions May Apply by CinnamonPinecones. Read by Distracted by Books. Chapter 4. The New Normal. Maybe it was the blanket, or maybe it was the bone-deep exhaustion finally setting in. Either way, he was surprised to be woken up by his alarm. He had actually slept through the night, which was a full 10.5 hours, since he's pretty sure he fell asleep promptly at sundown. Yeah, that would be the exhaustion catching up to him for sure. Getting up, he cracked his joints almost as violently as yesterday, which, considering he slept for several more hours this time, was pretty good. He should probably set an earlier alarm now that he had a further commute, but it's not like he had anywhere to spend the time to get ready for school. Finding somewhere to freshen up was quickly becoming a priority. His curls would not hide the grease buildup much longer. Maybe the showers at school? They were generally used more to just rinse off after gym than to take a proper shower, but maybe he could sneak in the morning. He decided to observe the comings and goings of the locker room today before class. Izuku wasn't often shoved in lockers, but it had happened a handful of times. It seems like the underdeveloped minds of his tormentors didn't realize that all lockers have a release button on the inside for safety, and Izuku wasn't all that scared of the dark. The restriction was the worst part. It reminded him of being pinned down. If he thought too hard about not having an escape route, he would start to panic. He did genuinely panic the first time, but every time after that had just put on a good show, struggling to get out until they left him alone. It was better than another beating at the very least. With that experience under his belt, Izuku tucked himself into one of the lockers in the boys' locker room. It felt a bit skeezy hiding in a locker room like that, but it's not like he could see anything. Regardless of the situation's morality, he needed to make sure he wasn't going to literally get caught with his pants down if he tried to take a shower here. When it was 2 minutes till the bell rang and no one had shown up, he slinked his way to class, a little more confident about trying for a shower tomorrow morning. After school, he made his way back to the beach to retrieve the rest of his things. As he made his way out after collecting his bag, a flickering light caught his eye. Curious, he made his way over to the mound of trash where the light originated. The source was a heavy-duty flashlight that was flickering in an SOS signal. Cautiously, Izuku picked it up and examined it. It definitely put the heavy in heavy duty. The thing weighed at least 5 pounds and was as long as his forearm. Maybe this place wasn't as picked through as he'd thought, because this flashlight was nice. Perhaps he'd come back and poke around another time to see if there was anything else of use to him here. The flashlight seemed to be waterproof, seeing as it was still operational. And was that a solar panel on the side? That would explain how it was still on after washing up here who knows how long ago. Maybe it was from the Coast Guard and fell overboard. Well, it didn't matter where it came from, finders keepers and all that. This was just the thing he needed to check on the structural integrity of the sublevel in his warehouse. His warehome? He chuckled wryly to himself at the thought. Humor sure was a way to cope. With goodies in hand, he took a different route back to the warehouse than he did yesterday. Seeing a kid carting luggage through the bad part of town once was suspect enough. Seeing it twice with different luggage would be enough to pique anyone's interest. Maybe people would notice the trend and tail him. Maybe he was being a little too paranoid. Either way, he wasn't about to take that risk. As soon as he got home and checked that his things were still in the alcove above the stairs, he opened the door, both flashlight and phone in hand, in case the behemoth was on its last legs when he'd picked it up. It wouldn't be fun to make his way into the depths, only for his one light source to cut out. That type of thing was just his luck. The space below echoed the creak of the door ominously. Cautiously, he made his way down the steps, checking the stability of each stair before putting his whole weight on it, even though they looked stable. Better to be safe than buried under rubble with a broken leg until he starved to death. What a nice thought. That definitely eased his nerves while walking into the void. The stairs turned halfway down, and there was a generously sized landing between the first and second half. Izuku guessed it was maybe 6 by 8 feet. Rounding the corner and shining the light down the rest of the stairs revealed another door to exit. The stairwell was completely encased, which lends proof to Izuku's theory that it was the most stable place in the building. It was along the outer edge, and each corner of the space was held up by hefty support beams that looked like they would hold strong for a while. Furthermore, being underground would regulate the temperature, keeping him warm in the winter and cool in the summer. He could set up his nest on the landing. There was plenty of space, and being able to sleep behind a closed door would do wonders for his peace of mind. The only problem is there was no light, no windows, and no power. One thing at a time, Izuku, he murmured to himself as he descended the rest of the stairs. The air on the other side of the door was quite musty. It had the distinct aroma of water that had stagnated a very long time ago, like a bog. It wasn't pleasant. The room was filled with huge pieces of machinery and conveyor belts leading to what looks to have been at one point a freight elevator, judging by the four steel support beams around it and the light pouring through from above. The carriage lay in the ground in the largest puddle of water, and likely the main cause of the odor. The far wall was lined with massive industrial doors that led to small bricked-in rooms with metal coils running through the walls. Spread out across the room were rolling tubs filled with what appeared to be, in Zuku's professional opinion, goop. High off, High enough off the ground to remain dry. He should do some research at the library to see if any of this stuff was useful or potentially hazardous. With that in mind, Izuku snapped a few pictures of the various types of mold growing all around the place. He should look into those too. He hadn't had any issues breathing here, but it seemed better safe than sorry was becoming his new mantra. His days started to fall into a new routine. On Tuesdays and Fridays, he'd sneak into the locker rooms to take a quick shower, and on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, he'd spend his morning at the library analyzing fights from news clips or working through selling his collection. Every day, he'd do his best to slink through the lunch line, and so far, he had a 56% success rate in getting food from the cafeteria without losing it all or most of it to the floor. It wasn't great, but things could be worse. The purple-haired boy from the library, he learned, was the head librarian's son, and that's why he'd been there before opening. Izuku avoided him as best he could after making a complete fool of himself without even speaking the first time they met. He and his mother seemed to be there every weekday morning, but thankfully for Izuku's nerves, he'd yet to see them there on a weekend. He'd been spending his weekends in the library as it was the only place with free Wi-Fi that wouldn't chase you out for loitering if you didn't buy anything. After a while, spending his whole weekend at the library grew dull, so he decided to take to his habit of wandering the city with renewed vigor. Soon enough, he knew all about local schedules from sunup to sundown, but he still hadn't dared to venture out at night. He kept going back and forth with himself on whether or not he should. On one hand, the city at night was the unknown, and the unknown was dangerous. It's not like he could scope out the lay of the land from the relative safety of the roof like he did before. There hardly was any roof, and the roof that was there couldn't be trusted to hold his weight. But he needed to know what was out there because, on the other hand, knowledge is power, so the more he knew about this place, the safer he would be. What if this place crumbles down in the middle of the night and he needed to make an escape? He would be working with little to no knowledge of where, who, and what to avoid. If he goes out, should he arm himself? He's got that flashlight, which could definitely be a weapon. The thing is more a technologically advanced metal bat than a flashlight, but it wasn't very threatening at first glance. It's just a flashlight, and it looks the part. If he brought a knife, that could possibly scare people off without even getting into a fight. However, a 12-year-old holding a knife isn't the most threatening thing one could come across at night, only moderately more threatening than a 12-year-old without a knife. He should conceal any identifying features. A short person with a knife was more threatening than a child with a knife. Either weapon, quote unquote, could easily be taken and used against him, though. He knew how to evade. He was quite good at it after years of practice. He knew how to track an opponent's movements to anticipate the next blow. He knew when to dodge, brace, or roll with the punches to lessen the impact, but he certainly didn't know how to fight back. It was like being able to understand the language but not speak it. He might be able to stumble his way through a sentence, but it would be rough. Izuku did not want to stumble his way through a knife fight, or any fight for that matter. He resolved to do some research on self-defense on his next trip to the library. If you asked Hitoshi, the green-haired kid who kept coming into the library in the mornings was frickin' weird. Though he supposed he wasn't one to talk, given how much time he had spent studying the kid's odd behaviors. At first, he thought the kid knew him because he looked so scared when he locked eyes with Hitoshi that first day. Fear was not generally the emotion he instilled in strangers. He was not an opposing figure, and anything remotely intimidating about his appearance he downplayed to the best of his ability. No, fear was usually the reaction of someone who knew him, someone who knew what he could do. Fear or anger. He's not sure which was worse. After a while, he concluded that the boy did not know who he was. He was just that scared of everyone. It was kind of sad. The few times his mother attempted small talk with the kid, he had looked like a deer caught in headlights. That wasn't the weird part, though. The weird part was what the kid spent his time doing. The kid had a habit of muttering, and Hitoshi's curiosity usually had him straining to listen to what the boy was researching. There was no common denominator. Half the time, the kid would be watching the news on mute and scribbling furiously in a battered notebook. Sometimes he would just work on homework, but sometimes he would come in to do research on the most random things. It didn't even seem to be for assignments because he never wrote anything down. He searched things casually, like one would Google what actor played a specific role, note the information, and move on, except he was tearing through what appeared to be advanced research papers. One day the kid was researching deadly mold spores, iron oxide, and brick making. The next day, he was looking into economics and browsing eBay for decade-old hero merchandise. Another time, he seemed to be researching how to repair solar panels and build generators, and today he was researching self-defense and specifically how to avoid getting disarmed in a knife fight. All of this bright and early at 6:30 a.m. every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday for the past month or so. Without fail, he would be there right when the library opened, and he would leave promptly 45 minutes later, leaving Hitoshi more and more confused every time. Maybe one day he'd pluck up the courage to talk to him, but given the boy's current topic of research, he decided that today was not that day.